So there I was, Jake Morrison, professional space trucker and part-time idiot, hauling a load of recycled protein bars to the Outer Rim colonies when my proximity alarm started screaming like a banshee with a stubbed toe. Now, normally I'd ignore it because space is full of junk and my sensors are older than disco, but this time something made me look. Floating there in the void near asteroid designation, whatever the hell was this tiny escape pod, smoking like a cheap cigar and spinning lazily through space. My first thought was to keep flying. Rule number 1 of space trucking: other people's problems aren't your problems. But then I saw her through the cracked viewport. She couldn't have been more than 20, with this pale blue skin and silver hair that somehow managed to look elegant even while she was unconscious and bleeding green stuff all over her torn jumpsuit. And here's where my brain decided to take a vacation, because instead of calling it into the space patrol like a sensible person, I found myself hauling her pod into my cargo bay. The girl came to while I was trying to figure out which end of my first aid kit was which. Her eyes were this impossible shade of violet, and when she saw me leaning over her, she scrambled backwards so fast she nearly fell off my makeshift medical table. "Please," she said in accented English that sounded like she'd learned it from old Earth movies, "do not hurt Zara. Bad aliens chase Zara. They want to take Zara back to bad place." I held up my hands in what I hoped was a universal gesture for "I'm not going to murder you." "Easy there, sweetheart. Name's Jake. I'm one of the good guys. Well, mostly good. I've had some parking tickets." She tilted her head like a confused puppy. "Jake is kind alien?" "Human, actually. And yeah, I guess I'm kind, stupid kind, apparently, since I just picked up a hitchhiker in the middle of nowhere without asking any sensible questions like who's chasing you or are they likely to blow up my ship." Zara's eyes went wide. "Jake is human? Real human from Earth planet?" "Last time I checked. Though my ex-wife might disagree about the human part." I started cleaning the cut on her forehead, trying not to notice how her skin seemed to shimmer in the light. "So what's this about bad aliens? We talking about debt collectors or the shoot first, ask questions later kind?" "Very bad aliens. They hurt Zara's people. Make them slaves. Zara escape, but they follow." She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Jake must not let them find Zara. Please." And there it was. The moment my common sense packed its bags and moved to another galaxy. Because when a beautiful alien girl looks at you with those big violet eyes and asks for help, apparently I turn into some kind of intergalactic white knight. "All right, Zara, you can ride with me as far as Earth. I've got a little apartment there, nothing fancy, but it's got a couch and a food synthesizer that only occasionally produces something edible." The relief on her face was so genuine it made my chest tighten. "Jake saved Zara? Really, truly?" "Yeah, kid, really, truly. But you're doing dishes for a month to pay for the fuel." She nodded eagerly, not understanding that I was joking, which should have been my first clue that something wasn't quite right about this whole situation. But did I listen to that little voice in my head telling me this was too easy, too convenient? Of course not. I was too busy being a hero. As I plotted a course for Earth, Zara curled up in the passenger seat and fell asleep. She looked so small and vulnerable that I actually found myself checking the scanner more frequently, just in case those bad aliens she mentioned decided to show up. What I didn't notice was the way her sleep seemed a little too peaceful for someone who'd just escaped mortal danger, or how her injured hand was already starting to heal at an impossible rate. I was too busy congratulating myself on my humanitarian instincts and wondering if she'd like pizza. Yeah, I know I'm an idiot, but in my defense she was really pretty, and I'd been alone in space for 3 months. A man's judgment gets a little cloudy under those circumstances. 3 days later, I was seriously questioning my life choices as I watched Zara try to figure out how to use a doorknob. She'd been staring at it for 5 minutes, poking it with one finger like it might bite her. "It's not complicated," I said, demonstrating for the 4th time. You turn it. Like this, see? Turn and push. She mimicked my movements with the intense concentration of someone defusing a bomb, and when the door actually opened, she looked at me like I'd just performed actual magic. Jake is very smart about Earth technology, she said solemnly. Zara, it's a doorknob. My nephew figured it out when he was 2. But then she wandered over to my ancient entertainment system, the one I'd been meaning to replace for about 5 years, and somehow got it working better than it had since I bought it. The picture was clearer, the sound was perfect, and I swear it was picking up channels I'd never seen before. How did you do that? I asked. She looked genuinely confused. Do what? Zara just touched broken thing. Sometimes broken things fix when Zara touched them. Right. Because that wasn't suspicious at all. I chalked it up to some kind of alien intuition about electronics. After all, she was from another planet. Maybe her people were naturally good with technology, even if they couldn't figure out doorknobs. The real fun started when Mrs. Henderson from next door came by with a casserole and got her first look at Zara. My new house guest was sitting on the floor, having given up on chairs entirely, eating cereal with her hands because spoons were apparently beyond her comprehension. Jake, dear, Mrs. Henderson whispered loudly enough for the whole building to hear, who is this lovely young lady? Foreign exchange student, I said quickly. From, very foreign. Like really foreign. Different hemisphere foreign. Zara looked up from her cereal and smiled brightly. Hello, Elder Henderson. Zara is learning Earth customs from Jake teacher. Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. Elder Henderson? Well, isn't that sweet? What a polite girl. Where are you from, dear? Far away place, Zara said carefully, like she was reciting something she'd memorized. Very small planet. I mean very small country. With many trees. Trees are nice, Mrs. Henderson said diplomatically. Well, I should let you get back to your studies. After she left, I turned to Zara. Okay, we need to work on your cover story. And maybe practice using utensils before someone calls immigration. What is immigration? People who ask difficult questions about where you're from and why you don't have any paperwork proving you exist. She nodded seriously. Zara will practice being more human. The problem was, her version of practicing involved some very non-human results. Like when she tried to help me fix my truck and somehow made the engine run so quietly I thought it had died. Or when she attempted to do laundry and my clothes came out not just clean, but somehow newer looking than when I'd bought them. Zara, I said, holding up a shirt that I was pretty sure had been stained and faded when I put it in the wash, what exactly did you do to my laundry? Zara cleaned clothes like Jake show. Put in machine, add soap powder, push buttons. This shirt looks like it just came from the store. She tilted her head in that adorable, confused way she had. Is that bad? Should Zara make clothes more dirty? No, it's just, never mind. But the weirdest part wasn't her mysterious talent for fixing things. It was the way she studied me. Not like someone learning about human culture, but like someone taking very detailed notes for a very important test. She'd watch me eat, make little humming sounds of interest when I got frustrated with traffic, and ask incredibly specific questions about human emotions. Jake, she said one evening while I was channel surfing, when humans feel angry, do they always make loud noises and turn red in face? Not always. Sometimes we just sulk quietly and eat ice cream. Ice cream helps with anger? How fascinating. And when humans feel affection for other humans, what do? I nearly choked on my beer. Affection? Well, that depends. Are we talking about family affection or other kinds? She leaned forward intently. Other kinds. Like when human male cares for human female who is not family. Great. Now, I was having the relationship talk with an alien who didn't understand doorknobs but could somehow repair complex machinery by touching it. Well, usually they spend time together, talk, maybe go on dates, share meals, that sort of thing. Dates are important for human mating rituals. They're not. We don't call them mating rituals. That makes it sound very clinical. She nodded thoughtfully and made another one of those mental notes I was starting to recognize, which should have made me wonder what exactly she was taking notes about, but instead I found myself distracted by the way her hair caught the light and how her laugh sounded like silver bells. Yeah, I was falling for her. Hard. And the worst part was, I was pretty sure she was falling for me too, even if she did keep asking me weird questions about human behavior like she was writing a field guide. But love makes you stupid, and I was about to find out just how stupid I could be. You know that feeling when your brain is screaming at you that something's wrong, but your heart is too busy doing backflips to listen? That was me for the next 2 weeks. And let me tell you, the universe was practically hitting me over the head with warning signs. First, there were the drones. Government surveillance drones had been buzzing around the neighborhood ever since Zara moved in, but they kept malfunctioning whenever they got close to my building. I'd watch them through the window, flying along just fine until they hit some invisible barrier around my apartment. Then they'd start spinning in circles and crash land in Mrs. Henderson's flower garden. Weird how those things keep breaking, I mentioned to Zara one morning. She glanced up from her breakfast, where she was still eating cereal with her hands because apparently spoons were harder to master than fixing my truck's engine. Perhaps government machines are not very well made. Maybe. Though it's funny how they only break when they get near our building. Very strange coincidence, she agreed, not meeting my eyes. Then there was the incident with my junker spaceship. I'd been complaining about how the old girl barely made it to Earth, how I'd probably need to scrap her soon because the engine was held together with prayers and duct tape. The next morning I went out to the garage to grab some tools and found her purring like a kitten. All her systems were running perfectly, her hull looked like it had just been detailed, and when I ran diagnostics everything came back green. Zara, I called, finding her in the kitchen trying to figure out how toast worked. Did you go near my ship last night? Zara may have looked at pretty ship. Is that wrong? No, it's just, did you touch anything? She gave me that innocent look she'd perfected. Maybe Zara touch a few things. Ship seemed sad. Zara wanted to make Ship happy. Ships don't have feelings, sweetheart. Are you sure? This ship feels very happy now. I should have pressed her on that. Ships definitely don't have feelings, and even if they did, you can't fix a dying engine by making it happy. But she looked so pleased with herself, and honestly, I was just grateful I wouldn't have to take out a loan for a new ship. The real red flag parade started when she began getting messages. I'd find her in corners of the apartment, holding these devices that definitely weren't human technology, having whispered conversations in a language that sounded like music and mathematics had a baby. When I asked about it, she'd claim they were letters from family back home. Your family has some pretty advanced communication technology for people from a primitive planet, I said one day, watching her manipulate what looked like a holographic interface. Not primitive, she said quickly, then caught herself. I mean, not all parts of home planet are primitive. Some parts very advanced, like cities, big cities with lots of technology. I thought you said you were from a small village. Small village near big city. Very near. Practically next door to big city. Right. But the moment that should have made everything click happened on a Tuesday night. We were watching some old Earth movies, and she was asking her usual detailed questions about human behavior, when suddenly she got this faraway look in her eyes. Jake, she said slowly. If Zara told you something very important about herself, would Jake still care for Zara? My heart did that stupid fluttering thing it had been doing a lot lately. Of course. What could you possibly tell me that would change how I feel about you? She opened her mouth, and for a second I saw something in her expression that looked almost regal, like she was about to announce something momentous. Zara is not exactly what Jake thinks she is. Zara's family is very important, where Zara comes from. And this whole situation with Zara being here, it is not exactly accident. What do you mean? She stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly her expression crumpled back into the helpless, confused look I'd gotten used to. Zara means that family sent Zara to learn about humans, like cultural exchange program. Very official cultural exchange program. That makes sense. So you're like an ambassador or something. Something like that. She looked relieved. Yes, ambassador. That is good word. I bought it. God help me, I actually bought it. Even though every instinct I had was telling me that ambassadors don't usually crash land in escape pods while running from bad aliens. Even though the story had more holes than Swiss cheese. Because I was an idiot in love, and idiots in love have a remarkable talent for explaining away the impossible. Well, I said, pulling her closer on the couch, I'm honored to be hosting such an important diplomat. She snuggled against me, but I caught her making that thoughtful humming sound again, like she was filing away my reaction for future reference. Jake is very kind to unknown persons, she murmured. Even when unknown persons might be more than they appear. Everyone's more than they appear, Zara. That's what makes people interesting. She looked up at me with those impossible violet eyes. Even when more than they appear might be much, much more. Especially then. If I'd been paying attention, I might have noticed that she looked almost sad when I said that. Like she knew something I didn't, and she wasn't sure whether to be happy or sorry about it. But I wasn't paying attention to much of anything except how good she felt in my arms and how right this all seemed. Even with the government drones and the mysteriously fixed spaceship and the definitely not human communication devices, love really does make you blind. And I was about to find out just how much I'd been missing. I woke up to the sound of air raid sirens and Zara shaking me like a maraca. Jake, you must wake up. They are here. Who's here? I mumbled, trying to figure out why my bedroom was lit up like a football stadium. Then I looked out the window and nearly fell out of bed. Ships. Massive, gleaming ships that looked like someone had crossed a luxury yacht with a space cathedral, hanging in Earth's sky like they owned the place. There had to be dozens of them, each one bigger than a city block, just hovering there while every news channel on the planet lost its collective mind. Oh, I said intelligently. Those guys. Zara was pacing back and forth, wringing her hands and muttering in that musical language of hers. She'd traded her human clothes for this flowing outfit that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and there was something different about the way she carried herself. Less confused refugee, more commanding. Zara, I said slowly, please tell me those aren't the bad aliens you were running from. She stopped pacing and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Guilty, sorry, and something else. Something that looked almost like royalty. Jake, Zara must tell you truth now. Those are not bad aliens. Those are, she took a deep breath. Those are Zara's people. The Andromedan Empire. And Zara is not refugee running from bad aliens. Okay, so who are you? Another deep breath. Zara is Princess Zara Thul, heir to the Andromedan throne. And this whole thing, the crash, the rescue, living with Jake, it was test. I blinked. Several times. I'm sorry, what? Test for human species. To see if humans worthy of joining galactic community. Empire needed to know if humans would show kindness to strangers, if humans would help someone in need even when it might be dangerous or inconvenient. So you've been studying me. Yes, but Jake, it started as study, but then Zara began to care for Jake. Really care. This was not supposed to happen. I sat down heavily on the bed, trying to process this. Let me get this straight. You're alien royalty. This was all fake. You've been taking notes on me like I'm some kind of lab rat. And now your people are here to, what, grade my performance? To decide if humanity ready for contact with galactic civilization. Based on how I treated you. Based on how you treated stranger who needed help. Jake, you were perfect. You showed kindness, protection, caring. You asked for nothing in return. You even defended Zara's right to make own choices when Zara spoke of staying on Earth. The full weight of it hit me then. I'm not just responsible for my own first contact experience. I'm responsible for all of humanity's. Yes. Because I couldn't drive past a pretty girl in distress. Jake saved Zara. Jake protected Zara. Jake cared for Zara when Zara was helpless. This showed Empire that humans have honor, compassion, strength of character. I started laughing. Not happy laughter, the kind of hysterical laughter that happens when your brain can't process how thoroughly you've been played. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I picked up a hitchhiker and accidentally became humanity's spokesman to the galaxy. Jake is perfect spokesman. Jake represents best of human nature. I'm a space trucker who lives in a studio apartment and eats cereal for dinner. Jake is human who risks own safety to help stranger. Jake is human who opens home and heart to someone different. Jake is human who sees person in need and acts without thinking of reward or recognition. The ships outside were doing something that made the whole building hum. Landing, probably, or preparing to land. Either way, I had the feeling my quiet life was about to get very, very complicated. So what happens now? I asked. Now Empire makes decision about humanity. But Jake, there is more. Zara was supposed to return home when test was complete. Zara was supposed to give report and resume royal duties. But? What? She looked at me with those violet eyes that had started this whole mess. But Zara does not want to leave Jake. Zara wants to stay on Earth. With Jake. You want to give up being a princess to stay with a space trucker? Zara wants to give up everything to stay with human who showed Zara what love means. And despite everything, despite being lied to and manipulated and turned into humanity's unwitting representative, I felt that stupid heart of mine do its fluttering thing again. Zara, I said, we need to talk about this, all of it. But first, I think your people want to have a conversation with me. She nodded, suddenly looking very young and very scared. Jake, what if Empire decides humans not ready? What if Zara's feelings for Jake make Empire think worse of human species? Then I guess we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, Princess, I think it's time for me to meet your parents. The look of relief on her face when I called her princess instead of running away screaming was almost worth the fact that I was about to have the most important conversation in the human history. 20 minutes later, I was standing in my living room wearing my least stained t-shirt and trying to explain to 7-foot-tall aliens in ceremonial armor why their princess was sitting on my couch eating cereal with her hands. This is how Jake taught Zara to eat human food, she said helpfully, holding up a handful of soggy cornflakes. Very efficient method. The lead guard, whose name sounded like someone gargling marbles, looked at me like I was personally responsible for corrupting royalty. Which, let's be honest, I probably was. Princess Zara Thol, he said in perfect English, your father the Emperor has been most concerned. The test concluded 3 days ago. You were scheduled to return immediately. Zara wished to study human customs more thoroughly, she replied, still clutching her cereal. By living in primitive conditions with this human? Hey, I interrupted because nobody insults my apartment, even if it is the size of a broom closet. These aren't primitive conditions. I've got cable and everything. The guard looked at me like I'd just claimed to have invented fire. You dare speak unbidden to the royal guard? I dare speak in my own living room, pal. Princess or no princess, this is still my home, and in my home we don't talk about people like they're not standing right there. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that usually precedes either applause or executions. The guards looked shocked, Zara looked terrified, and I realized I'd just mouthed off to the alien equivalent of the Secret Service. Jake, Zara whispered urgently, you cannot speak to royal guard that way. Why not? They're being rude. They are royal guard. They can be rude. Not in my apartment they can't. That's when the second wave of ships arrived. These ones were even bigger, with more lights and what I was pretty sure were weapons that could turn my entire city into a parking lot. One of the guards touched something on his wrist and spoke in rapid Andromedan. The Emperor comes, he announced. All will kneel when His Imperial Majesty arrives. I don't kneel, I said automatically. You will kneel for the Emperor. I don't kneel for anybody. It's bad for my back, and besides, I'm not one of his subjects. Zara grabbed my arm. Jake, please. For Zara's sake. Just this once. But here's the thing about being pushed too far. Sometimes your brain just stops cooperating with self-preservation. No, Zara. I'm sorry, but no. I'll be respectful. I'll be polite. But I won't kneel. Your father wants to meet the humans? Well, here's what humans are like. We stand up for ourselves, even when it's stupid. The guards were reaching for what looked like very advanced stun weapons when the wall of my apartment simply disappeared. Not exploded, not broken down, just gone, replaced by a shimmering doorway through which stepped the most impressive being I'd ever seen. Emperor Zal Thuran was about 8 feet tall, with the same violet eyes as his daughter, but the bearing of someone who'd never had to ask for anything twice. His robes seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself, and when he moved, reality bent slightly around the edges. Father, Zara said, and I could hear centuries of protocol in that one word. Daughter. His voice sounded like distant thunder. And this must be the human who has caused such complications. I looked him straight in the eye, which took more courage than I'd known I had. Jake Morrison, Your Majesty. And with all due respect, I didn't cause any complications. I just helped someone who needed help. Indeed, and when my guards informed you of proper protocol, you refused to comply. I explained my position. Respectfully. He studied me for a long moment. You would defy the Emperor of Andromeda over a matter of pride. I'd stand up to anybody over a matter of principle. Sir, I added, because I wasn't completely suicidal. Zara made a sound like a deflating balloon. Jake, what are you doing? Being human, I said. Your Majesty, you wanted to test us, right? To see what we're made of? Well, this is what we're made of. We help people who need help, we stand up for what's right, and we don't back down when we believe in something, even when the odds are impossible. The Emperor's expression was unreadable, even when backing down would be the intelligent choice. Especially then. Even when your defiance might doom your entire species to continued isolation. I felt my heart sink, but I kept my chin up. Even then. Because what good is joining your galactic community if we have to stop being ourselves to do it? Jake, Zara whispered. You are being very brave and very stupid. Story of my life, Princess. The Emperor looked back and forth between us, and something that might have been amusement flickered in his ancient eyes. Tell me, human Jake Morrison, what are your intentions regarding my daughter? My intentions? She has declared her desire to abandon her royal duties and remain on your primitive planet. With you. I am curious about your thoughts on this development. I looked at Zara, who was watching me with an expression of desperate hope. Well, Your Majesty, I love her. I didn't know she was a princess when I fell for her, and honestly, the whole royalty thing kind of complicates matters. But if she wants to stay, if she wants to build a life here, then I want to build it with her. Even knowing it would mean she could never return home? That would be her choice to make. Not mine, not yours. Hers. The silence stretched out until I was pretty sure I could hear my career as humanity's representative circling the drain. Then the Emperor did something I absolutely wasn't expecting. He laughed. Emperor Zhao Thuran's laughter sounded like a thunderstorm having a good time, and it filled my entire apartment with the kind of sound that makes you feel simultaneously terrified and oddly reassured. His guards looked as confused as I felt, which was strangely comforting. "Outstanding," he said, wiping what might have been tears from his ancient eyes. "Absolutely outstanding. In 3,000 years of ruling, I have never encountered such magnificent insubordination." "I'm sorry, what now?" I managed. "You, Jake Morrison of Earth, have just provided the perfect conclusion to our test. Not only did you rescue a stranger without thought of reward, not only did you protect and care for her, but when faced with overwhelming authority, you stood your ground for what you believed was right." Zara looked as stunned as I felt. "Father, you are not angry?" "Angry? My dear daughter, I am impressed. This human just proved that his species possesses the three qualities we value most: compassion, courage, and the wisdom to know when authority should be questioned." I sat down heavily on my couch, suddenly feeling like my legs might not support me. "So humanity passes the test?" "With flying colors, as you humans say. Any species that produces individuals willing to defy an emperor for love and principle is exactly the kind of species we want in our alliance." One of the guards made a sound like a confused elephant. "Your Majesty," he refused to kneel. "Yes. Wonderful, isn't it? Do you know how refreshing it is to meet someone who doesn't immediately grovel? 3,000 years of people throwing themselves on the ground every time I enter a room gets rather tedious. But the protocols are suggestions, Commander. The respect is earned, not demanded. And this human has shown me more genuine respect in 10 minutes than most beings show in a lifetime." I was still trying to process this when the Emperor turned back to me with a grin that was absolutely terrifying on a face that powerful. "Now, about this matter of my daughter wishing to remain on Earth." Zara tensed beside me. "Father, please." Normally, I would forbid such nonsense. Royal duties, succession, the good of the empire, etc. But these are not normal circumstances. They're not. Jake Morrison, you have just become the most important human being in your planet's history. You are our first contact, our introduction to your species, and frankly, our favorite example of what humanity has to offer. I really don't think I'm anyone's favorite example of anything. Nonsense. You're perfect, rough around the edges, charmingly irreverent, and completely authentic, which is why I'm offering you a position as Earth's first galactic ambassador. The room started spinning a little. Ambassador? Ambassador? Think of it as a promotion from space trucker. You'll represent your entire species in galactic affairs, help ease Earth into the larger community, and ensure that humanity's transition to galactic citizenship goes smoothly. Your Majesty, I don't know the first thing about diplomacy. Excellent. Most diplomats are terrible at it anyway. Too much bowing and scraping, not enough honest conversation. You, on the other hand, have already demonstrated that you can stand up to an emperor and make him laugh. That's exactly what we need. Zara was staring at both of us like we'd lost our minds. Father, you cannot be serious. I am absolutely serious. And as for you, my dear daughter, if you wish to remain on Earth to help our new ambassador adjust to his duties, I suppose I can allow it. Temporarily, of course. Temporarily? I asked. Oh, let's say 50 or 60 of your Earth years, give or take a decade. Zara threw herself into my arms with a squeal of joy that probably shattered windows 3 blocks away. Over her head, I looked at the Emperor. "Your Majesty, why do I get the feeling you planned this whole thing?" "Because you're more perceptive than you look, Ambassador Morrison. The test was always about more than just compassion. We needed to find humans who could serve as bridges between our species, leaders who could represent Earth without losing what makes humanity special. And you think I'm that person? I think you're a man who risks his own safety to help a stranger, defies authority when it conflicts with his principles, and falls in love with the person rather than the princess. If that's not ambassador material, I don't know what is." The guards were starting to look like they'd given up trying to understand what was happening. I knew the feeling. "So let me get this straight," I said, still holding Zara close. "I picked up a hitchhiker, accidentally became humanity's representative to the galaxy, got engaged to an alien princess, and now I'm supposed to be Earth's first interstellar diplomat? That's about the size of it, yes. And this all started because I couldn't drive past someone who needed help. The best adventures usually do." I looked down at Zara, who was grinning up at me like I'd just promised her the universe. Which, in a way, I guess I had. "Well, Princess, looks like we're going to have an interesting life together." "The most interesting," she agreed. "Jake will be wonderful ambassador. Jake understands what is important, helping others, standing up for what is right, and knowing that love is worth any risk. Even if it means I have to learn actual diplomacy, Zara will teach Jake all about galactic protocols. But Jake must promise to stay exactly as Jake is. Galaxy needs humans who are truly human." The Emperor nodded approvingly. "Wise words, daughter. Now, Ambassador Morrison, shall we begin your orientation? Earth's formal introduction to the galactic community is scheduled for next week." "Next week?" I squeaked. "No time like the present. Don't worry, we'll start slowly. A few trade agreements, some cultural exchanges, maybe a small space station in your outer solar system. Nothing too overwhelming." As I watched alien ships filling the sky and realized that my quiet life as a space trucker was officially over, I found myself laughing. Because sometimes the universe has such a twisted sense of humor that you can either laugh or go completely insane. "You know what?" I said, pulling Zara closer and grinning at the Emperor who had just turned my entire world upside down. "Bring it on. How hard can interstellar diplomacy be?" The look of absolute terror that crossed the guards' faces suggested it might be harder than I thought. But hey, I'd already survived falling in love with an alien princess who turned out to be testing my entire species. How much weirder could things get? Famous last words right there. But as I stood in my tiny apartment, holding the woman I loved while making plans to represent humanity to the galaxy, I realized something important. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you're just trying to help someone who needs it, even if that someone turns out to be alien royalty with a secret agenda. Even if helping them accidentally makes you responsible for your entire species' cosmic future. Even if you're definitely not qualified for any of this, but you're going to do your best anyway because that's what humans do. We help people. We stand up for what's right. And when the universe throws us a curveball that turns our entire understanding of reality inside out, we adapt. Even if we complain about it the whole time. "So," I said to the Emperor, "about that wedding planning. Any chance your people have experience with human Andromedan ceremonies? Because I have a feeling this is going to be complicated." Zara laughed, that silver bell sound that had gotten me into this mess in the first place. "Jake worries too much. Love is universal language. Everything else is just details. Easy for you to say, Princess. You're not the one who has to explain to his mother that he's marrying alien royalty and becoming Earth's cosmic spokesperson." The Emperor's grin was absolutely wicked. Oh, Ambassador Morrison, I think you're going to find that conversation is the least of your worries. Wait until you meet the Galactic Council. And as alien ships continued to fill Earth's sky and my future stretched out into territories I couldn't even imagine, I realized that Jake Morrison, space trucker, was officially extinct. In his place stood Jake Morrison, galactic ambassador, husband-to-be of an alien princess, and living proof that sometimes the best way to change the universe is to just be decent to the people you meet along the way. Even when those people turn out to be testing your entire species for cosmic citizenship. Especially then. 10.